Working on my cardio, it's perfect with this audio. You better call an audible. Celebrate this victory win, it's so applaudable. I don't need the audience here, cause this is all I know. Crossover, fade away, we living in a great time. Better get your weight up or get ate up at the baseline. This'll be the jump off. Started with a jump ball. Throw the alley-oop off to my crew, now that's a dunk ball. 2 points and 1, you about to foul out. Free throw all net, everybody wild out. I can let my game talk, you were just a loudmouth. We can get the ring with the whole team and then the crowd shout.
Hello again, Irish fans, and welcome to this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball with Mike Gray. I'm Jack Nolan, joined as always by the head coach of the Fighting Irish. And Mike, your guys experienced just about every emotion on the competitive spectrum this past week, but ended up with a huge high note, Notre Dame's second all-time win over Duke at Cameron Indoor Stadium.
Well, what a road swing. You have your hearts flat out broken in Atlanta, and you can't finish. But to have the resiliency, togetherness, and mental physical toughness to bounce back and get a win at Duke was very powerful for us. So I'm proud of our group, and I love our frame of mind at this point.
And everybody is playing so well, but the one performance that really stood out was that following a tough game at Georgia Tech where Cormac Ryan struggled and was not able to get a shot off on the final possession of a 2-point game, you put him back into the starting lineup at Duke, and he responded with a career-high 28 points, 21 in the first half to spark your comeback.
Well, he was devastated in Atlanta after the game and blaming himself, which we don't do that in our program or our culture. We turned the ball over 9 times in the second half. That's why we lost the game. We should have won by 20 if we took care of the ball. Having said that, Georgia Tech made all the plays. And my feeling was I did not want him hanging his head, and I wanted him to snap back quickly. So let's start him. And man, did he deliver.
When we come back, we will take you to Atlanta for all the highs and, yes, the lows of Notre Dame's 2-point loss to the Yellow Jackets. You're watching Inside Notre Dame Basketball, presented by the experts at TireRack.com. It's time now for our game breakdown, brought to you by our friends at Meyer. For the third straight game, you got off to a terrific start at Georgia Tech with your 2 big guys, Durham and Leschewski, combining for your first 11 points to stake you to an 11-2 lead.
Well, I love how we started. We were in an offensive rhythm. We ended up getting into a zone defense that I think stalled them a little bit. They are a gifted offensive team, as we saw in the second half. But when you can get off to a good start on the road, it sure does make you feel good, and it takes, for the first time, a crowd out of the game.
Another guy who has been playing consistently outstanding basketball for you is Prentice Hub, who delivered his 5th double-double with 15 points and 10 rebounds against the Yellow Jackets.
He has found a rhythm using the weapons around him. He's made the commitment on the defensive end and has been better there. And as we've seen many, many times, he is a fearless guy down the stretch because he'll want to make the play in game situations.
Now, they won it despite the fact that your big guy, scoring big guy, Nate Leschewski, was even better for you in the second half than he was in the first half, scoring 14 of his game-high 27 points in pressure-packed situations.
And, you know, he got a lot of those with one big. You know, Jawan was out, and we spread the floor around him. He got a lot of slips off the ball screen. Prentice saw him, and, you know, and then he got some threes, too, and they lost them in transition. No, he's playing well. He's playing confident. And for him, you know, he's had some games where he's not scored, but he's rebounded and done the dirty work, and then he comes back, and he's just taking what the defense gives him. He's not forcing stuff. That's why his percentages are flat out off the charts, because he doesn't force anything.
Now you're down too late. Leschewski comes up with another big play, a big block, and you've got a chance. But Tech does a really great job getting back in transition. They actually triple-teamed Hub, and then DeVoe closes out really well on Ryan. He was about a foot behind the arc, and he ended up without a shot, which I know Cormac was really beating himself up about after the game. But you know what, Mike? I'm not making excuses, but even if he took the shot, it's a tough shot. Tech did well there.
Yeah, they did. And I give our guys a lot of credit. We weren't very good defensively in the second half, but we got enough stops, and we got the big one. We didn't want to foul. There was a differential in the clock. We did not want to foul. We knew we'd get it back. Nate makes a great play. Now here we come in a scramble situation with a chance to tie or win it. Prentice, I know, looked at everything and was going to try and do something, but you're right. There were three guys running at him. You hit Cormac, it's going to be a tough one. He's got to get it off up over the top of a 6'7" guard, and he just thought there was more time when he kicked it back. And he was devastated in the locker room. It took him 15 minutes, just to get his head up. And I hate to see that with young men because he worked his butt off. He did everything to help us get to that point. And luckily, fortunately, he's got great teammates. Like the one thing this group has done, because we've had a lot of situations where you had your heart broken or you've had disappointment or a guy feels he's let the other guys down and those guys pick him up. When your teammates and your culture that you've created can pick up guys that have their head down or feel like they cost the game, then you're more than halfway back if you can get that part of your culture. And I do believe we really have strength in that department.
We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. So after the heartbreaking 82-80 loss at Georgia Tech, you stayed on the road. You headed up to Durham for a rematch with the Blue Devils. And unlike your previous three games, Mike, this one did not start well for Notre Dame. Duke came out and made 8 of their first 11 shots, including all 4 3-point attempts to take a 20-8 lead just 6 minutes into the game, forcing you to call a timeout, and you did not hide your displeasure with your guy.
Well, a little bit of it was you knew Duke was going to – they had a disappointing loss at home to North Carolina. They were going to come out of the gate. I thought we were ready to play, watching us in warm-ups the day before in practice. And I think most of it was Duke just playing out of their mind and not missing a shot for a while. But it gave me a chance to kind of, how do I want to phrase this, light up our guys a little bit in a timeout and maybe wake them up a little bit more. To their credit, we came out and methodically played basketball like we've been playing to get it to 5 points at halftime. But 50-45, you knew we're going to have to score to get out of that building because they're going to score. Fortunately, we were able to get to 93, and that's hard to beat anywhere.
Now, Duke would expand that lead after the timeout to 15, but then Cormac Ryan absolutely caught fire. I've been doing Notre Dame games since 1982. I don't think I've seen a better individual performance in a half. In the final 13 minutes of the half, Cormac scored a career-high 21 points in the half alone to help you cut the lead from 15 down to 2 at halftime. What a way for Cormac to bounce back from a rough game at Georgia Tech.
I thought he bounced back like the high-character, tough guy that he is. And, I thought he was in that rhythm that we've seen in practice. He can really get going offensively, and we've seen spurts of it, but he can really, really get going. And what's lost in it is he was really defending. I mean, the charge that he takes, he rotates over and takes a charge. He was rebounding, and he's always defended and rebounded all season. I think he's starting to get a feel of how to just play simpler and calmer on the offensive end and not over dribble. And when he has a little bit of room to get a shot off with that stroke that he has, we want him to shoot it. He's learning how the guards have the green light in this system.
I want to talk a little bit about a guy just about nobody talked about much after the game, and that's Dane Goodwin. He reminds me of David Graves. I always used to say David Graves was a stat sheet stuffer, and Dane is the same. He had 12 points in this game, including a couple of threes, and at just 6'6", he was your leading rebounder with 7.
It's the one thing about him. He's always had the instinct to rebound. He's become more of a guard as far as being good with the ball, and we knew he could always shoot it and score it. And where he had to get better was the defensive end. And he had some plays where he stayed in front of a very athletic driver and cut him off and made it a tough shot, which has helped us, and I think helped him become a better all-round player.
Now, Cormac kept you in it in the first half, but it was Hub who took over in the final 6.5 minutes, scoring 9 of his 15 points, dishing out 3 of his 8 assists, and hitting a huge deep dagger that apparently a certain radio announcer lost his mind over with 37 seconds left to help put this game away.
It was one of your greatest got-its in the history of got-its. Let me put it that way, when Prentice nailed that thing. But I think there's where we see a Prentice Hub unafraid, fearless. The lob to Juwan Durham on the roll, that is a courageous play in time and score. I don't think I would have the courage to do that. I'd want to make a safer pass. But I love his fearlessness. And he was fearless at the end of the Georgia Tech game, trying to get to the rim, and a couple rolled off. He bounces right back the next game and says, I will do it again. The step back three, when he let it go, I'm thinking, this one's going. Because we had a good karma and vibe about us. But a fearless young man loves the big moments. And as we know, in this career that still has a lot of time left in it, he's delivered on a lot of big moment plays.
So the Irish fly home from Durham with a 93-89 win over Duke, just Notre Dame's second all-time win at Cameron Indoor Stadium. We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. It's time now for this week's edition of Irish Intel. This is where we get control of the video to Coach Bray as we break down some of the best plays from the previous week of action. Coach, our first play this week comes from the Georgia Tech game and focuses on something you talk about all the time, good ball movement and passing to get an opponent's defense moving.
This is an example of the ball not sticking. The ball is not sticking in anybody's hands. Nate on a good roll. We get ball reversal. Nick swings it. We flatten the defense. We cut. We move. There's great movement here. We then get to a ball screen and we throw back and we get an open look because we moved the defense with 5 or 6 passes. It gave us a cleaner look.
Mike, we talked earlier in the show about how well Jose Alvarado played against you for Georgia Tech. We're going to pick up a play from the second half of that game where Alvarado comes up with a big steal, but Prentice Hub just refuses to give up on the play, and that prevented Tech from tying the game for the first time since it was 2-0. Or 2-2.
So as we mentioned, their pressure bothered us. 9 turnovers in the second half, but we actually get the ball across half court. We don't turn it over into back court, but that's what Alvarado does. But watch Hub on this play. The effort and recovery to come back and make that block is really fabulous. And again, I think the effort that Prentice Hub has used on the defensive end has made him a better player on the offensive end.
Mike, our next play is indicative of how Cormac Ryan played at Duke. In this play, he comes up with the steal on the defensive end and then forces the issue and goes coast to coast for the score.
Well, as I mentioned, Jack, no one's been a more engaged defender than Cormac. Look at that chest and wall up. And then he usually is the guy that picks up loose balls like he did right there because he has a nose for it and he has defensive instincts. Then we do a great job attacking transition defense where he just little shake move and then to the basket hard. I thought his drives the other day against Duke really got him confident.
And our final play this week involves Prentice Hub and Juwan Durham, who were huge in your win at Duke. With just over 2 minutes left in the game, they combined on a beautiful screen and roll alley-oop to give you a 4-point lead.
Well, it's a very courageous play by your point guard, to actually throw the lob in a 2-point game coming down the stretch. But we get great spacing around these two, Juwan and Prentice. Nice ball screen and roll. And Prentice has really found him, but that's about the only place he was going to catch it. Over the top, fearless play, but really well executed by the two of them.
We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. Now, Nick, you've had flashes of brilliance throughout your career against North Carolina, your first year of action when you hit those 2 big threes, the 21 points you scored at Boston College, your second year of playing time. But this year, you have been consistently a productive and played an important role in every game that you have played. What has led to this level of performance on your part?
I think it just comes with, being an older guy, like Coach said. been here in the program for 5 years, know how it works, and just kind of took a step back and needed to see what I needed to do to help the team win. And being able, get those consistent minutes and knowing what is expected of me, I think I've been able to produce at a much more consistent level than in years past. It's no secret that we have a bunch of guys who can score the ball, and we're pretty offensively gifted. So I know that I think sometimes we can get caught in a place where everybody kind of wants to score and the ball's not moving that much. And I'm a guy that I don't really need to go out there and score a ton of points. If the ball comes to me and I'm open and I'm in position to score, like Coach said, I will. But I'm not someone that particularly hunts a shot all the time. So I take pride in getting others involved and moving the ball and helping our team score. And then defensively, I think I'm one of the better defenders on the team, and I take pride in being able to defend at a high level, no matter if I'm guarding a guard or a foreman. I think that my ability to switch helps us a lot when I'm on the floor.
Nick, Chase Claypool got a lot of publicity for being Canadian and playing for the Notre Dame football team, but you're the first Canadian to play for the Notre Dame basketball team, the first Canadian to start for the Notre Dame basketball team. Is there a certain sense of pride in that distinction for you?
Yeah, it definitely is, considering that, there haven't been any Canadian basketball players yet at Notre Dame, so I like taking pride in that. But it's just, Canadians come in America and trying to represent their country as best as possible. And, Chase did that at the football level, and I'm trying to do that at the basketball level.
I just have one last question for him, Jack. Favorite Tim Hortons donut?
I gotta go with the original chocolate dip. Dip.
Yes. That's a good spot north of the border, yeah. Jack.
I've heard of it, never had the honor of being there, but I'm going to have a little more free time next year. Maybe I'll have to make a road trip. Nick, it has been a pleasure to call your games and get to know you over the years. I know you're going to do, as I just said, great things in life. Thanks for taking the time to visit with us today.
Yep, and congratulations on your retirement, Jack.
Thank you. We'll be back with more on this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball right after this timeout. Mike, your team has won 5 of your last 7, and you have averaged 84 points a game in your last 4 outings. You have a lot of momentum as you head into a 2-game homestand this week against Miami and Clemson.
Well, I like where we are. I think we've kind of found a bit of an identity. We've talked about the stop score mentality. By the way, we had 17 stop scores against Duke, our new analytic. But when your offense is purring a little bit and your guys are knowing who they are on the offensive end and you can get up into the 80s, you're hard to catch a lot of nights. And I hope we can keep doing that offensively.
Now, even in this pandemic year where most opposing teams do not have many people in the stands when you play on the road, it's still easier to play at home. And this is the first time this coming week in conference play you will have played consecutive games at home. Do you think with the normal routine of classes and being at home can help this team continue to build on the momentum that you've been building the last couple of weeks?
Well, you're right, because we've been available and testing negative, we've been available to be rescheduled, which hasn't always maybe played into our favor all the time, but no one can complain about that in a pandemic season. I do like that we're in class and we have a routine of getting up, going to class, coming over here at 3 o'clock into our practice routine. And I think that can really benefit us in this homestand.
Keys to beating Miami and then Clemson.
Well, can we defend like we did down there? I thought we did a great job in our zone defense, but, we play man in zone and we try to figure it out. We also were in a pretty good offensive rhythm down there. Can we get into some stop score modes? 17 against Duke. Can we get it to 20 against Miami?
Mike, thank you. Good luck this week.
Thank you.
Folks, that will do it for this week's edition of Inside Notre Dame Basketball with Mike Bray. Coach and I will return next week to break down all the highlights of the Miami and Clemson games. Until then, for Coach Bray, I'm Jack Nolan. Thank you so much for watching. Stay safe, everybody. And as always, go Irish.